Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Game Changer Mentality podcast. I am your host, Rodney Flowers, bestselling author, keynote speaker, and resilience trainer. And today we have another special guest on the show, Miss Dr. Carolyn Ross. She's here with us today, and I'm really excited about her being here. She's an author, speaker, and expert in using integrative medicine for the treatment of eating disorders, obesity, and addictions. She's the author of three books, and the latest is the Food and Addiction Recovery Workbook. Dr. Ross is also the CEO of the Anchor program, which is an online coaching program for obesity and binge eating disorder. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Carolyn Ross to the show. Thank you, Carolyn, for being here with us today. How are
Thank,
you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Rodney, for that wonderful welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, I see that you are doing great work in the world as a doctor and as an expert in your field. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how did you get involved, with that type of work?
Well, I've been a physician for quite some time, but kind of in the middle of my career, I had a personal experience which shifted my focus from working in primary care and women's health to working more with addictions, mental health issues, and eating disorders. And that was my middle son, who suffered from very severe depression from the time he went to college. And he was unable to complete college because of his severe depression. And 10 years after his freshman year in college, he actually died as a result of his depression. Um, and that was, as you can imagine, a really life-changing experience for me. And it sent me kind of on a journey of sort of like discovery for myself. First the journey was all about, guilt and blame and shame and fear and all of those things that happen when you lose a loved one like that. He was only 29 when he passed, and you know, my second son, obviously the love of my life. He was an incredible human being, fashion photographer, but very spiritual. I say he was my first spiritual teacher, actually. So that journey went from me feeling like I should have done more. There should have been something I could do. I'm not just his mom, I'm also a doctor, to what could I do to help other people not have to go through what I'm going through. So at that point, I shifted my career to focus on mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, as well as the addictions and eating disorders. And I started working at a rehab facility called Sierra Tucson in Tucson, Arizona. And when I was there, I could sit before other parents and I could really know, and they could know that I knew that what they were going through. I could really help them through that journey that they were on, and hopefully help them avoid losing their loved ones. So it really gave new meaning to my medical career at a time when I was sort of had hit bottom, from my own personal experiences, and this helped me to resurrect my life. As you know, when you
Yeah,
give back,
yeah,
you get more than what you give.
yeah. No, I completely get it. But first, before I talk about anything else, I just want to say my heart goes out to you
Thank
regarding the loss of your son. I'm very sorry, and my condolences to
Yeah.
you for that. And the way that you've really allowed yourself to pivot and find the good in that situation and help other people is very admirable. I commend you for doing that.
Well,
So
it's the same that you've done, Rodney. So
yeah, but not everyone can do that, and so I
yeah,
just acknowledge that,
thank you.
because it's a lot of times when we lose someone in our lives, it causes the very thing that you're doctor for is the eating disorders. the addictions and other things in life, because we, sometimes people give up or they can't see their way out. And you have a real life experience with going through something like that and being able to come out of that. And so I just didn't want that to go unrecognized.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And you're right. I didn't reach for drugs or alcohol because that's just not in my nature. But I suffered from pretty severe depression myself after that, and had to kind of claw my way out of that. But we all have opportunities to rise up, and oftentimes, what I've noticed is that we don't use the hooks that have been given us. For me, the hook has always been my children. My love of my children, my desire for them to have the best life that they can have has always pulled me through whatever challenges I personally face. So at the time of Noah's death, I had a 9-year-old son, my youngest son, and he too was grieving because he was very close to his brother. And so, my devotion to taking care of him and wanting to make sure that he got through it, helped me through it. So I think the message is the same as the message you're talking about. How do you change your mindset? Because at the time that you lose someone, it's like dark glasses go over your eyes and you can't see any of the light on the side. You may intellectually know that there's light, but you can't find it. It's like you're in a cave, and every morning you wake up in that same cave. And I think for people who suffer from all of the mental health issues that we're talking about, whether it be depression, anxiety, addictions, and so on, it's the same. They have that mindset that really makes it hard for them to see their way clear to the other side. And to change that mindset, you have to find a hook back into life. So what changes the game, what changes the mindset is looking for and accepting that hook. For me, it was my kids. For other people, it could be work, or it could be their faith, right? Or it could be other things that will, it's that X factor that keeps you going when you don't even want to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're aware of that and you look for and you're willing, and I've heard so many people say, well, I'm willing, I want to get better, but they're not willing to do what it takes to get better. So willingness is saying, yes, I'll do whatever it takes. And willfulness is saying, yes, but I'll do this, but I won't do that. And I think that's where we get stopped is in that place.
I want to come back to that hook and the willingness. So if I forget, just remind me. But
Okay.
I just want to share that you are so right. Because I remember when I was lying in the hospital after being told I was going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life, and not able to walk. When someone tells you that you're not able to walk, you start thinking about all the things that you want to do in life that you perhaps may not be able to do. And I was 15, so I had a lot of life ahead of me.
Yeah, right.
And so I just wanted to do everything. If there was anything that I could do, I wanted to do it. And I felt like that was just not going to happen for me. And I get a lot of people ask me, how do you keep going? Your drive, you continue to do all of these things. And, thank you, because that is my hook. I haven't really realized it in the light that you just put that, but that is completely it, because now I can't stop. I can't turn off my determination if I wanted to. And the more I do, the more I want to do. And it's like, I always hear that voice in the back of my head, like, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. And it's just like a coach just yelling at me, like, keep going, keep doing it, do more,
Yeah,
you can do more.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, and just getting back to, what you were saying about the willingness, and it's having that why, I have
That's the hook. That's
yeah,
the hook. Yeah.
having that why, and the why is because I know what it's like when your life is threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, I just want to keep on going and just leave a legacy, leave
Yes.
something behind. And to relate this to the audience, sometimes we don't have a big enough why to
Yeah.
keep going. We don't have that
Or we
hook.
don't see the why. I think that's more it. I think all of us have big hooks. It's unusual for a young person like yourself when you were 15 to be able to reach those reserves, because like you say, when you're 15, you don't even know what you want to do with your life. You don't even know what's ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unusual, and says a lot about you and your character and how you were raised.
Thank
But
you.
but for everybody there is a why, but sometimes we don't look for it. We don't know it's out there, and sometimes we don't recognize it when it comes about. And we don't know that sometimes the very thing that's been put right in front of us is the thing that's going to save us. You know?
Mm.
Like for me, I went from being a very, very successful, well known women's medicine doc in San Diego. And when my son died, I kind of crashed and burned. And then I was given this opportunity to do a fellowship, and I'd have to move from beautiful San Diego. Okay, that's me. I love beautiful San Diego.
You're a Cali girl.
I am a Cali girl. I may not be blonde, but I'm a Cali girl. And I had to move to Tucson, Arizona. So that was a huge ask for me. But somehow I felt, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe this is going to help me. And I moved, not knowing whether it's going to work out for me, not knowing whether I'd even like it. But that was my hook back into life. And it started me on the path of finding my passion again in medicine. Because when you're a doctor and you aren't able to save your own folks, you start to question
Mm.
everything you do.
So let's sit right here because you've said something that's very interesting. Um, it sounds like this is a sensitive area. When disruptive change occurs in our life,
Yes.
and if you don't, like you said, if you don't realize that hook, if you don't find that hook, it's easy to get or fall into those eating disorders or fall into those addictions. Because I believe it's one or the other. Because I've never seen people with whys, big whys, have addictions or
Yeah.
or behavior disorders. But what you'll find is that people that have those types of disorders, they don't have the why. So this is a tricky little sensitive area here that we let's address this because how can a person develop that why? And how can they not, when they're at that crossroad and it's okay, I need my why, I need this willingness, I need a reason. And if they don't have that, they make that decision or they fall into something that's detrimental to their health or detrimental to their life. What would you suggest as a doctor when someone is in that area?
Well, just before we go that, I want to just make few comments here, because one of the things I see a lot is people blaming themselves when they are stuck in addiction or stuck in depression or have an eating disorder. And they keep thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't, and even their family members will say, why can't she just get her life together? Why can't so and so just, move on? And they start to internalize that feeling of something's wrong with me. And for most of the situations, just as you noticed, Rodney, just as you brought up, it's really not about what's wrong with you, it's about what happened to you. So for me, this thing happened to me and it took me down to my knees. And like you said, yes, I had a choice to go here or to go there. But in the beginning, all I could deal with was being on my knees. And if I had continued to say, what's wrong with me? I must be a bad doctor. I can't even save my own son. I should have done more. I should have done something different. If I had continued down that road, then I could have ended up chronically depressed, overeating, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the first thing is to be aware when you are in that situation, to ask yourself, how can I shift the conversation from what's wrong with me to what happened to me? And that doesn't mean that you have to play the victim. We're all victims in our lives of something, but it doesn't mean you have to stay as the victim. What understanding is, what's wrong with you can lead you to understanding how you got there. And a lot of times, for many of the people that I work with, something happened to them when they were really young and they were not able to do anything about it. So this thing that happened to them, whether it be having a family member who's incarcerated, having a parent with depression or anxiety, witnessing violence in the home, all of these kinds of things, which they're now calling adverse childhood experiences. The more of those you have happen to you in your life as a child, the higher your risk is for mental health issues, addiction, and eating disorder. And why is that? Because those experiences actually change the way the brain is wired. They change those connections between the nerve cells in the brain, the neurons in the brain. So all it takes after that is some other trigger, and boom, that addiction gene gets turned on, that depression gene gets turned on, and so on. So I just want people to understand that it isn't always just a matter of let's get up and, raise ourselves from our bootstraps. Sometimes you got to work on getting your boots on first,
Yes.
and then you can raise yourself up.
And I really want to drive home something that you said, because I think what happens is when things do happen to people, they automatically go to what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And you said it so perfectly. When you start asking yourself that question, your mind begins to try to solve that mystery. It starts coming up with answers, and then you start believing those answers, right? It's probably this, it's probably that, or I'm this and I'm that, and over, and this gets into your subconscious, and it becomes a part of your being, and before you know it, it becomes a part of your identity, and that's how you see yourself. Your self-image is made up and mimics and mirrors that thought pattern,
Oh my gosh, what you just said is so perfect. And that's exactly what happens, that you get into that track of what's wrong with me. And then your mindset changes to solve the problem. And it comes up with those ways of justifying it. That's a great, I don't know, it's not an analogy, but I love the sequence that you put together there, because that's exactly what happens to people.
Yes. And so could it be, doctor, could it be that if we're going to have a game-changing mindset whenever we are in debilitating situations, hard situations, even somewhat depressing situations, could it be that we develop a mindset of life happens to me sometimes, but that doesn't mean that something's wrong?
Right. There was a phrase that someone said to me when I was in my down and out position, and it was a friend, and I was confiding in her how I was, feeling so negative and so bad. And she said, "But Carolyn, don't you realize you always land on your feet?" And that's how other people saw me, but that wasn't how I saw myself. But when she said that, I heard that, and then I started thinking, wow, she's right. This has happened. That's how I've always landed on my feet. And I started to have a little more faith in the possibility that life could get better. And I think that's what we call hope. And a lot of times when you are down and out, you can't see the hope anymore. And so you have to have faith that whatever is happening right now doesn't have to be your identity or your destiny for the future. Because, life is always changing. It's always happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're in that little dark cave, it looks like you're going to be in the cave forever. But if you can bring a moment of thought to it of, things can change for me. Things are happening. I may not see them happening, but I'm going to get through this. And so you asked the question about, well, what can people actually do? And I think that's a great question, because I know when you are down and out, it feels like you can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you can barely get up, eat, sometimes not even shower, do your hair, etc. I don't want to get too personal, but what I found is if you can find a couple of things. One is if you can find one thing that you can do every single day that shifts your mindset, even if it's a tiny bit, that will help. So for me, it was listening to tapes. Like I would listen to Eckhart Tolle, or I would listen to, some people listen to spiritual music in the car, or, all kinds of small things that are passive. It doesn't require a lot of energy, but it just takes a little bit off the edge off of that dark cave and shines a tiny light in there. And you do that on a regular basis, then the light starts to get bigger and bigger. The other thing you can do is, I think one of the things we tend to do when we're down and out is just to let our food program go, to hell in a handbasket. And what I've learned in medicine, and particularly integrative medicine, is that the brain, which affects our mood, affects our mindset, right? The brain uses 50% of the calories and the oxygen that comes into our body, even though
Wow.
it's this size. And yet it takes, because it's constantly working. Even when we're asleep, our brain is still burning calories, right? Because it's operating all the switches for the rest of the body.
That is so amazing. So for all of you that want to lose weight, you might want to start thinking a little bit more and using them a little bit, burning a little bit more calories. So I'm just joking in the brain. I'm just joking. I'm just making light of it.
Yeah, I know you are. But I bet the listeners out there going, how can I burn calories in the brain? My brain on a treadmill. What I'm suggesting is that you eat for your brain. Okay, everybody knows we got to eat for our bodies, right? But a lot of people are so tired of hearing that, and they really don't understand what it means. But when you think about, if you eat for your brain, that will affect your mood and all of your decision making, etc. Your brain is the master controller. So how can you feed the brain better? Junk food and all of the kinds of food that's part of the American diet are put the brain on fire. That song, On Fire. I won't try to sing for you, but
come on, just a little tune.
Come on, you never start me. I can't carry it too. But if you're feeling bad about yourself, and yet you're getting up and going to McDonald's and eating junk food every day, that's putting your brain on fire. So then your brain can't make the feel-good chemicals that it wants to make to help you out of the situation you're in. So you can start, even if it's just a tiny thing of, starting to eat a piece of fruit a day, or starting to eat, a little bit, cut off one of the junk food runs.
Mm-hmm.
Just one, still eat the rest, but cut off one. So, but think about what your brain needs to survive and to function well. And just do a little bit of that. And then we know that exercise, any kind of exercise, walking for 5 minutes a day, is actually much better than medication for depression. So when I was down on my knees and I couldn't see myself going out and going to the gym, I would just take the dog for a walk. I would ask my son to go for a walk with me. I'd call a friend and say, meet me for a walk, just so I could get up and move my body and, start feeling a little bit better. So those are some things that if you really want to get well, if you can just bring yourself to do one little thing a day.
So I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Dr. Carolyn Ross, and she's just given us 3 game-changing tools that we can use if you find yourself in depression, dealing with addiction, and you're trying to come out of it. Here's some things that you can do yourself, some game-changing tools that you can do yourself. And I love these things because they're so easy to implement. And she's talking about changing your shift and focus. Stop focusing on the things that are not going so great and start shifting your mindset towards something else, maybe listening to some music, something that makes you feel good, to get your mind off of what it is that you're going through. She also talked about eating good foods because your brain needs good food to put you in that good feeling, that feel good mood, and exercising. So, there's 3 game-changing things that are easy to implement into your life if you find yourself in these types of situations. This is how you get up and come out of it. And so, Doctor, I want to ask you another question, about that. And that is, I believe in power foods. There's certain types of food that will kind of always put you in a good mood and give your brain, if you will, the nutrition that it needs to function properly. Are there some power foods that you would recommend or anything like that?
Well, I think of power foods in 2 ways. One, like you said, and then the other way are foods that you can use that when you eat them, they automatically shift you back to a healthier diet. So, some people may have foods from childhood that are really good, that put them in a happy mood, and we call those comfort foods. And not all of those are necessarily healthy foods, but sometimes they do give us comfort, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are also other foods that, like you said, are power foods for mood and behavior. One of those is anything that contains the omega-3 fatty acids. So omega-3 fatty acid foods are things like salmon and tuna. If you don't like fish, go to walnuts, other kinds of seeds and nuts that have omega-3 fatty acid. So that's one of the power foods for this group. The second one is anything with B vitamins. And if you don't like these foods, or if you haven't learned to like foods that are the dark leafy greens like spinach and collard greens and kale, the over popular kale in my opinion, then you can actually get a supplement and that's because you need B vitamins. That's what I'm getting to. You need an assortment of B vitamins because those B vitamins help your brain make the serotonin, dopamine, etc., that make you feel good. So if you're not big on eating green leafy veggies, then go to the drugstore and get a B complex vitamin and take that every single day. If you don't like fish and you want to get omega-3s, you can get a supplement, omega-3 fatty acid supplement, and take that every day. Those are probably the 2 best nutrients and foods that you can get to help your mood.
Very good. Thank you for that. And I want to go back to something that you said a little earlier in the show about how certain things that we can think when we think something is wrong, it triggers certain neurons in the brain that causes us it turns on those depressing moods, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned that, listening to music or shifting your focus on other things can help you come out of that. But what are some other things, even more tangible things that people can do to turn on those neurons that, or turn off those things that make them feel bad and turn on the things that make them feel good?
Well, all of the experts in integrative medicine, including my mentor, Andrew Weil, Deepak Chopra, and some other people, got together and published an article in the Wall Street Journal on this very topic. How do you turn on the good genes? How do you turn off the bad genes? And it's all diet, lifestyle, supplements, all of those feel-good things that we do. So it's diet, exercise, supplements. We've talked about all three of those. It's doing things that make you happy, even if it's just a little happy, because that triggers the dopamine reward center. And when you trigger the dopamine reward center, it releases dopamine, which is the pleasure molecule in our brains. So that pleasure molecule gives us pleasure when we play with our kids, when we watch a sunset, when we take a walk on the beach or wherever. So it's diet and lifestyle that really turn the genes off or on.
You know what I'm hearing you say is self-care. That's exactly what I'm hearing. And I love self-care. I don't do it enough. I need to incorporate it more into my routine. But what I'm hearing you say, doctor, is that if you perhaps are going through some type of traumatizing situation or experience, that self-care becomes the priority for you to get
Absolutely.
over that.
Oh, that's such a good way to call it, is self-care. And, it can include things like massage, getting acupuncture, all of that. And I want to mention one more, and that is getting support. Because in the book that Andrew Weil wrote about all this people who live beyond 100 years old,
Hmm.
the main factor was social support.
Mm.
So if you are part of any kind of community, and that's why, the 12-step communities, if they help at all, they help because they provide social support, and they help a lot of people who may not have big families or may not have, close friends who are not using, but they can go to an AA meeting and get that kind of support. But you can get it in church. You can get it by calling a best friend. You can get it by talking to your husband, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of people are stubborn and they don't want to reach out for support. They want to do it all on their own, right?
Yeah, I've seen people they associate asking for help or getting support with weakness, and
Exactly.
it's not weakness. It's actually a source of strength when you can
And
go
it's a
get support.
benefit to those who are offering support too. Because when you give support, you also get that feel good feeling in your brain as
Well,
well.
and it's hard sometimes because you know a lot of times people have environments that are not conducive to their success. It's not conducive to their growth. It's not conducive to them coming out of a situation. And so people have to reach far sometimes, or if you will, to get the support that they need, because there's a lot of negativity in the world. You and I both know that. And that's why I love my work, because I like providing an outlet for people, providing a place where people can be heard, and they can be considered, and be significant. But
Mhm.
that's so far few in between in this world today.
Yeah.
I mean, are there some suggestions that you have for people that may find it difficult to change their environment, and get the support that they need?
Well, here I want to just say a little something about families, because what I see that hurts a lot of people is if they come from a really dysfunctional family and they don't, and they think, oh, well, my family should help me, or, I should make my family help me. But many times their families just don't have either the emotional or the financial or whatever it takes that they need. And I've seen a lot of people be successful in finding, when I was growing up in the South, we used to call it play mamas or play daddies, So you would have it's almost like a godmother, or just a person in your life. It may even be someone at work, who is you're friends with, and they become like a mother figure to you, or they become like a family member to you. And so I just encourage people to really look honestly at their families. If you've been going to the family well over and over and over, and you're finding the well is dry, you got to just acknowledge the well is dry. There's nothing you can do about that. And so then you look outside of the family. And as I mentioned, the 12-step meetings are always a great source of support. At almost every hospital, there are grief and loss groups. So if you're grieving a loss, then you can find a grief group in town. Now we have online Meetup, the meetup.com. They have groups for specific, issues that people have. So, I would just look around you and find something that you feel comfortable with that actually meets your needs instead of beating your head up against a brick wall of your family.
And let's talk about that a little further too, because I'm hearing you say that not having a family is no excuse, but I think it goes even deeper than that, because you have to be able to get certain things off your mind. You have to be able to talk about certain things, and having that person to talk to is key, because if you don't, like the alternative to that is internalizing all of those feelings, internalizing all of those thoughts, and not getting them out. And that in itself, multiplies the situation. In my opinion, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but not having an outlet, in my opinion, really, causes depression, causes addiction to just, expand and multiply. I mean, would you agree with that statement?
Oh, I would 100% agree. And I think it's a real problem in our community with our Black brothers and sisters. It's a problem with, the Hispanic community, where there's that machismo, and particularly for men, but also for women who, like you said, feel like, well, if I ask for help, that means I'm not a man, or I'm weak, or whatever. But you are 100% right. Emotions are meant to come up and out. They're energy, and energy needs to be on the move. When it stagnates, it then just expands inside of you and makes things worse. So if you think of energy like the energy of anger, if you hold on to anger and you become very tight and, and rigid, it just makes everything worse, and your reactions to people are worse, and so on. The same thing with sadness. If sadness stagnates inside of you, it just makes you feel heavier and heavier and less able to move through it. So emotions, you're supposed to move through. Your emotions will not go away unless they are expressed. So
Wow.
emotions will have their say. You cannot avoid that.
Wow, that is such a profound. I mean, because I try to look at things practically. Okay. And so what I'm hearing is, when we see these examples of depression and addiction, I mean, as a doctor, I guess when you're treating this stuff and you're dealing with it, I mean, that to me makes it so clear. I mean, we have a case where the emotion is not able to pass through.
Right.
It's stagnant, it's still. And as we know, with life is motion. Life isn't still, it flows. And so
Yeah.
whenever there's a disruption of that flow, even with our emotion, it causes breakdown. And
Absolutely.
breakdown, turns into decay, and eventually death, right? And so, not to really just dissect the situation, but I'm really trying to bring forward the importance of getting that flow back into your life.
And that from being in sports, how a team even can be in the flow, how a player in a sports game like football or soccer or whatever can be having a great day and some days not so great. So the goal, though, is for us to be in our own flow on a regular basis. And as you say, if you think of it like a river, and the way the emotions are supposed to go is they're supposed to be like leaves floating on the river.
Mm.
They just go past us. We see them. Oh, yeah, I was really pissed yesterday. Oh, well, I'm dealing with that. I'm talking to somebody about that. It's moving on, etc. And then sometimes in a river, you'll get a blockage, a dam, like Beaverspill, and then the water backs up and it can flood, right? So just visually, that what you talked about the flow, if you think of all the rocks in the river, where sometimes we can step across the rocks to move forward, and other times we get tripped up on the rocks. All of those rocks are like emotions under the surface, and yet they have an effect on us every day. You know, when you carry anger home from work, and then you start yelling at your wife or yelling at your kids, you know, that's you not expressing your anger in a way that benefits you. And yet it will be expressed. And so it comes out sideways in you yelling at your kids.
Or some other kind of sickness or disease or behavior issue or addiction or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow, man, this is so good. This is, you know, I hope the listeners are getting as much out of this as I am, because the way you're articulating things is really driving the point home on how self-care, exercise, eating properly, getting the support, making sure that you have an outlet for your emotions, for those, you know, things that sometimes get bottled up inside of us, and allowing that to flow through you. That is the key to having a healthy mental and emotional state in life. And we're here with Dr. Carolyn Ross.
And that's also the key, Rodney, to changing your mindset. So we started by talking about how the mindset is really what's formed from your life experiences, from your childhood experiences. They form you. As you know, there are certain people who grow up in communities where all they see is violence and hatred and anger and so on. And they grow up to be, you know, angry people, often self-medicating by using drugs or alcohol or even an eating disorder. And so until those experiences are dealt with. So when I see people coming into treatment centers where I've worked, I know that most of them have had a lot of stuff happen to them before they get to me. So again, we're shifting that conversation and trying to say, how can we heal what's happened in the past so that we can kind of erase all of that from our mindset, take those dark glasses off, and see if we can navigate a new world. And, you know, you see that happen sometimes in people who are in prison, where they, you know, they developed a different mindset. You know, there's a few famous cases, and, you know, they have used their prison experience to shift their mindset. And that's, you know, that's what it takes to make these game-changing life shifts.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about vision, because at the beginning of the conversation, you know, we were talking about having a why, and you talked about with your experience. I think you said that you seen what was possible for your life, and I think that's critical, to be able to see what is possible, even in the darkness. You can see that's definitely what happened with me. I seen what's possible. Even if I couldn't walk again or run again, I seen that there was something possible for me. And so in addition to everything that we talked about, I guess, you know, another key element here is having a vision, or developing a vision for what's possible in your life. What are your thoughts?
Okay. My thoughts are you're 100% right, and not everybody can do that initially.
Okay.
So I know that some of the people I work with, they may have had a vision for their lives before they got hooked on drugs or alcohol or became severely depressed, but they can't even remember it, you know? And then when they get sober, we start talking about what's your hook, and they remember, oh, I always wanted to. One of my patients is training to be a paramedic now, and he's in his 40s, but that was a dream for him. You know, another patient is a businessman, and, you know, so on and on. But sometimes someone has to hold that vision for you. Someone has to see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And for me, that's how I see part of my role. I was talking to a patient yesterday, and he comes from a very wealthy family, and but has been a heroin addict for years now. And all of his friends have, grown up, gotten married, finished college, and he's behind. And you know what it's like if you're 40 years old and everybody's moved on beyond you, and it looks like you're staring down a long life tunnel with nothing to look forward to. And so, I hold the vision for him. And I even said to him, one day, you're going to be married, you're going to have children. And this is why you need to learn how to take care of yourself now. So I'm supplying a hook for him. And he's like, oh, I can't even think about that now. I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'm thinking about it for you. I'm holding it for you. I had a patient with anorexia that was so severe, it was really life-threatening. And the same thing happened. I helped her to hold a vision, and she got better. She went to school, and now she's a therapist who works with children with eating disorders. So
Wow.
sometimes you need, and maybe it's a parent, maybe you're lucky and you have a mom who sees you, but you just need one person to see you, and that will help you kind of start taking those little tiny steps until you get to the place where you're seeing the vision yourself.
Is it okay to ask for that?
Absolutely.
Would you recommend someone ask for, can you hold space for me on my
Yes.
vision? Could I count on you to help me keep this vision alive?
Yeah, but even if you don't have a vision, you can say, I can't see the forest for the trees. Tell me what you see. And I mean, I've definitely done that for my children, where I have said, I know this is a rough time for you, but I can see that things are changing. You may not see it, but things are changing. And that's the kind of thing that gives hope.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't all strong in character. Some of us are frightened of things. Some of us struggle doing the hard stuff. And if you're one of those people, you can find people to lean on. And, if you do find someone who's willing to see you as you really are, not just, and that, you've heard me talk about addiction a lot before. And the thing that drives me crazy the most is when people view addicts as, oh, they're weak, or they have a moral failing, or something's wrong with them. Because what it does is it takes away that vision. It takes away the space that you could be holding for them to become who they truly are. And like I've said before, having addicts in my family, I know that what they want is what all of us want to be loved. They want to love other people, and they want to contribute. They're very sensitive, and they want to feel like they're contributing. So in whatever way you're able to hold space for an addict, I'm not saying let them take advantage of you. No, you got your firm boundaries, and then you got your space. That's it.
I love that.
That's what we need to help people move past these addictions, eating disorders, depression, etc.
Wow. So we're getting towards the end of this show. Tell us about your book. Tell us about your latest book that you have, the Food and Addiction Recovery Workbook. What is that about?
Yeah, the Food Addiction Recovery Workbook is it's the third book in my trilogy, if I can say. My first book was on binge eating disorder and compulsive overeating. The second book was on emotional eating, and this book is on food addiction. It's really to help people who are struggling with food and body image issues, and to give them this kind of frame that we've been talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's not about, hey, I'm a bad person, or I'm weak, or I don't have willpower. It's really about what's happening in the brain. How do you replenish the dopamine reward center. How do you heal from the things that have happened to you in the past? And from there, then, how do you deal with food and your body image? So that's basically it, and it's available at a lot of bookstores, also available on Amazon.
Wow. Where can people reach you if they wanted to learn more about you or contact you or reach out to you for support? How can they do that?
Yes, my website is carolynrossmd.com. That's CarolynRossMD.com. They can email me through that website. I'm also on Facebook at Carolyn Coker Ross MD. So both of those, but you can go to my website and you can click directly through to the Facebook page from there. And the Facebook page, you can message me. I am definitely willing and interested in talking to people about these kind of topics. And I even offer a 15-minute free consult. So I'm lowering the barriers of access here. It's all
Fantastic.
for you, Rodney, and your shows.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And for those that are listening, please take advantage of this wonderful woman who's a wealth of knowledge and has a heart for helping people. Carolyn, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been tremendous, full of information, and I love your spirit. I love what you're doing in the world. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rodney. It's been such a pleasure to be with you.
Good. So, would you do you have any last words before we wrap things up?
My last word is um, take one step today. Just one step. Do one thing, like Rodney said, of self-care. Just pick one. Maybe it's just drink an extra glass of water today. Just do one step for yourself today because you deserve it.
Wow. So awesome and easy to do. Thank you, Dr. Carolyn Ross, author, speaker, and expert in integrative medicine, imparting her wisdom on us today. You're awesome. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Game Changer Mentality podcast. We'll catch you next time.